Hello everyone, welcome in a new video, welcome in a new training video about Kubernetes. Don't hesitate to subscribe to this channel, like it and comment, of course, to support me. And also you can share this channel and this video if you want to help some friends, for example. So let's go. Today we will discover, we will open a new session about volumes inside Kubernetes. What is volume, how to use it, and this is the first video about that. And we will create, of course, our first volumes inside our Kubernetes cluster. So let's go. Just make pause. Yes. Why to use volume? Volume is the purpose, the main purpose about volume is exactly the same thing like with Docker. If you already use Docker, you probably know that when you stop and you drain, not you stop, but you drop a container, if you don't mount any volume just to persist some data, you probably will lose your data with this container. So of course it's really bad, and you need to fix it. And how to fix it inside Docker? This is, for example, in the command line. You want to use some volume, you use -v option, and you specify on the host for example, a directory on your host, and you just link it with a directory inside the container to be sure that each data will be pushed inside this specific volume on the host. So this is just a mount, this is not synchronization stuff, this is just a mount that you use. So sometimes, not always, that depends about which option that you want to use, but sometimes in Kubernetes this is exactly the same thing. So the main purpose is to not lose data, and you need, when you create a pod, or when you create, of course, we already saw that when you want to run a pod, you can use, for example, deployment or stateful set. We will see that, but you probably need to mount a volume just to persist data. And if you use some stateful application like databases, of course you will need to mount a volume for sure. But you have some other use case that you need, where you need to persist some data, like for example, we already have seen that for configuration stuff, we use config map or we use secrets, and we have already seen that to use it and to mount it inside a pod, this is exactly like to mount a volume, because we declare some volumes, and we use volume mount inside the pod to mount it inside a specific container. So you can use volumes inside a container inside the pod, but if you have multiple containers inside it, you are not. It's not mandatory to mount it on all the containers inside the same pod. And this is really useful because as a reverse, you can mount the same volume in multiple containers inside the same pods. And for example, in a pod, if you have or if you want to collect some logs, like for example just Nginx containers, you can mount the varlog Nginx directory inside the specific volume. We will see that. And if you want to centralize, for example, logs, and to push your logs inside ELK or stuff like that, you maybe want to add a second container like FluentBit or FileBit or FluentD or other stuff that allows you to stream logs to your centralization logs. And to do that, you can create a second container to your Nginx containers and mount the same volume where you mount on the first container the varlog Nginx. And you can mount it inside another container like FluentBit, for example. And you can mount this volume and, of course, stream the same logs with your other or your second container with a specific process like your streamer, like FluentBit, to send your logs to your log centralization. Okay, and of course you can store some other stuff like key value datas, or static images, other files, etc., etc. So some other words about different kinds of volume. So we already have seen that we have config maps and secrets previously, of course. And today we will see ephemeral volumes like EmptyDir. We will see direct disk, so to use directly the disk that we have on our local host, because when you run a pod and of course a container on a specific host, you can use the disk that you have on the same host. You can use it. Or you can use a distributed storage engine like Ceph or maybe GlusterFS or stuff like that. Or NFS, of course. And you can use another kind of usage and dynamic storage like container storage interface. This is dedicated, for example, when you use a cloud provider. Many cloud providers provide directly an external storage interface based on a specific engine and provide you what we named a storage class, but behind that, this is a container storage interface where you can use directly the API about this storage interface and provision some volumes and mount it automatically inside your container. So this is really, really useful and easy to use it. And you can use, for example, other dynamic stuff. Okay, so today the purpose is just to begin to discover what is a volume, how to use it, or classical or really basical volume, and we will discover the empty volume. So this is take care because this is really ephemeral stuff. That means what? This is just, for example, you want to mount a volume to share data between containers, like we already, our previous example with Nginx and our FluentBit. In this case, we don't want to really persist data, but we need to have like an interface or a shared storage between our both containers, and to do that we can use EmptyDir. The name is EmptyDir, and this is an ephemeral storage. Why ephemeral? Because if we just drop the pod, of course we lose the data that we have inside it, but probably, and if you take care about that, maybe you don't need to keep these data, or if you want to keep it, of course, don't use the EmptyDir. And this is, yes, just a temporary stuff. You can use it, for example, for caches or shared files, but temporarily, of course. And don't use it for data like a database or stuff like that. To use it, you have some option, of course. You can use a medium to set. If you want to use a real disk inside the EmptyDir, but you can use not exactly a disk, but a memory. So if you use that, you use a part of the memory. What that means, of course, it's an ephemeral thing. It's not a real storage, but the performance is really better, and you can use it for really quick things. But it's not really useful if you just want to share data. This is just if you want if you have a performance issue and you need to use it, and you need to fix the size limit to be sure to not provision the volume, and take care about these things. And of course, for memory, it's a big thing to not have some OM kill or stuff like that, to just oversizing, over provision the memory and use all the memory that you have on the host where you just have your pod. Okay, just an example how it works. So this is an example based on pod, but remember, in many cases you don't set directly a pod, but you probably always you will set pod through the deployment. And to do that and to use a volume inside the pod, if this is a deployment, of course, we can add an annotation and imagine that it's the template of pod and the specification about the template of pod inside a deployment. This is exactly the same thing. But inside this pod, for example, we have two containers. One container is based on Nginx image, like you see, and another is based on Alpine. And what we do, we just set a volume inside volumes. So you can, of course, set some many volumes. The name of the volume, temp storage, this is exactly the same thing that we used for config map or secret. And here we just set the key to EmptyDir to use it as an EmptyDir. So this is an ephemeral storage. Here we don't change what we have seen here, so we don't set the medium key. By default this is no, so that means we don't use the memory, we use a specific part of disk, and we don't set the size limit. But you can set it here it's just an empty dictionary, but you can set here some other key and the size limit and the medium. If you want to use memory, you can set medium equal to yes, and that's it. And to use it, you can mount it inside the first pod, inside the first container, sorry, this is very important. And you can use the key volume mounts, like here, and you can just add your first volume. The name, of course, of this volume is temp storage, like here, and where you want to mount it inside the specific container, the Nginx container. And here, for example, we want to mount it with inside /cache. And we want, for example, to use the same volume in just the next container. And next to this container, we have the container Alpine, and with specific command, but it's not really useful, of course. This is not a real use case, but we can use the same volume like here. We just can copy and paste, and the name, of course, of this volume, and the mount path is the same, but you can change the mount path, but the mount path, and it will be the same data inside the directory. For example, if you set here /var log, you have the same data that we have inside the /cache in the Nginx directory. Okay, and of course, this is not so magic. This is just automatic things. This is not magic. This is system, and the system allows us to do all the things with some magic declaration with YAML. But if you check with on the host, when you push, for example, this example, you can just troubleshoot or just to have a look only with sudo mount on the host where we store the pod, you can just have a look on it, and with a sudo mount, and you can grep, for example, empty for EmptyDir, and you can see here that we have tmpfs, so temporary file system, and the specific directory about our pod, and with the ID of the pod here, and the volumes, and inside the volumes, that means that we have one volume inside this pod, and this volume is a type of the type of this volume is EmptyDir, and this is the temp storage name. This is the name of the volume, and we can see that this is a tmpfs, like here, with read write and some other stuff, like the size, if you set it to 1 gig of volume. Okay, and of course inside the pod you can make a df-h, and you can see that, for example, here the slash cache, here we have 1 gig and tmpfs, and this is our volume. But take care, but we will see in the next directory, take care about where you mount your volume when you want to persist it. So this is the time for a demo. So probably, yes, we have a cluster here. We can connect on it, K0S10, like that. And now, what we want to do, I can create a specific directory like that, yes. And it's time for the demo. No pod inside our cluster, but this is a classical cluster with only, not a classical, but just a little cluster, a demo cluster with only one node. Let's go. What we have in our example, not many examples, 2 examples only. The first one is this one. So we can create exactly the same thing that we have seen previously, just to create the pod with the cache directory, and the mount is temp storage, like here, an EmptyDir, like here, and the Alpine and the Nginx image. Oh yeah, the Nginx image, and I can just apply it like that, and we have the pod. Kubectl get pod. We can wait a minute. I can just have a look on what we want to do just after. Okay, and now we have so we need to pull 2 images. The first one is Nginx, and the second one is the Alpine, of course. And now it's okay. I can do sudo mount grep empty, maybe like that. No. Yes, because this is specific. This is not really tmpfs. We can't see it directly. But if you want to check how you can do that, you can go inside the pod, kubectl exec-ti, the name of the pod, of course. And we have already seen that. You can use the bash here, and you can see something that we didn't see right now before. We have 2 containers, and when we want to use kubectl exec to just join a pod, we don't really join a pod. We join one container inside the pod, and here you can see the output, and in this output what we have, just kubectl say to us that we have 2 containers. The first one is example container, and the second one is Alpine, and by default kubectl just make a choice and use and just connect to the example container. So we are inside the example container. To check that, you can use host name, and now df-h, and you can see here that we have our cache here, and it's mounted directly on the disk and not on TMPFS, so not in memory. Okay, so now I can delete this pod like that. We can delete kubectl with kubectl delete. Okay, pod. I need to delete the pod. And we can create a second pod with memory. And this is when we can use sudo mount and grep EmptyDir to just check things. So take, yes, we can use to be quick. If you want to drop really quick a pod when you have some issue with terminating stuff, you can use --grace -period and set 0 second and it will be quick. Okay, now we can edit a second pod. We can go to the beginning and okay, I can set the content of this one. What we want to do, we want to create a volume on temp storage, but based on medium. Memory, we want 1 gig of volume based on memory, not on disk, and we want to mount it inside only one container Nginx and inside the cache directory. So if I just run it again with an apply like that, I can just check. Normally it's quick because we already pulled the Nginx image in just previously, and now we can exec again like that. Of course, inside it we have exactly the same thing that we have before, but not on the disk, but on TMPFS. And if I just go on the host, if I just sudo mount and grep empty like that, you can see that we have the TMPFS, the ID here, and normally if I use kubectl describe on the pod, kubectl describe on the pod, and you can find the ID setdd. Okay, we can check if we have it. Where it is. Not maybe on get pod, not like that. We haven't the ID of the pod. Okay, kubectl get kubectl get pod -o yaml get pod like that, and we can probably see that we have an ID. Yes, this one. This is the UID of the pod, and this is exactly the same UID that we have for the dedicating path for the volume, like we see here. And here it's the name of the volume, and the type of the volume is TMPFS. So this is due that to the medium part, set to memory, of course. That's it for today. Thank you for following this video and see you in the next one. Bye bye.